Hey, what's going on, Internet? Welcome to another Deck Tech. I think this is number 11? Number 10? Number 11? I don't know. But anyways, Hakeem has been doing these weird subscriber builds, and they've been pretty awful. You know, the Raid Bombardment deck, maybe it just doesn't exist. Like, you just can't build it. Just like, you really can't build the green-black zombie skeleton deck, really, with the cards they give us. Or the green-black zombie skeleton deck with, like, 8 million pump spells. It's just, it's just not all the pieces are there. But something that both those decks had in common, the initial builds, were just, in my opinion, completely unnecessary spider spawnings. A total just-in-case card, which I just can't stand. It's like, people main decking, enchantment hate, like main deck Reclamation Sages, like, just in case. Like, basically the rationale behind spider spawning was, well, if they kill all my guys, then if I draw this 5 mana card, 5/7 mana card, maybe I'll get back into the game, maybe. I don't know, just so weak. And we actually saw on his channel like how completely underwhelming the card was when he drew it. I mean, to me, it's just like saying, in a green-white tokens deck, it's like, I should put Planar Cleansing in there, just in case to kill all my guys, right? Like, no, it doesn't make much sense. But anyways, back to the whole spider spawning thing. It's an old game, so we're gonna go in, and you might as well show the spider spawning deck, or a deck that's built to maximize spider spawning, all 3 copies. So, we're going old school. I mean, this archetype has existed since the game first came out, and we're a month and a half away from Duel's origin, so you're gonna see a lot of older decks now as the channel goes on. But whatever. I like to watch videos. I just like to see the gameplay. I don't really care too much about the actual decks themselves. I just want to see some gameplay. So anyways, let's go. This is my take on the spider spawning deck. It's changed a little bit since the game first came out, but we go through 2 Bloodghast, 4 Necromancer Assistant, 2 Dead Reckoning, 2 Gravedigger, 4 Viscera Dragger, 1 Shadowborn Demon, 1 Rescue from the Underworld, 1 Sheoldred, 1 Rune-Scarred Demon, 4 Elvish Visionary, 4 Satyr Wayfinder, 1 Vengevine, 1 Paragon of Eternal Wilds, 2 Mycoloth, 1 Arbor Colossus, all 3 spider spawning, 1 Pelakka Wurm, and 1 Craterhoof Behemoth. So like most spider spawning builds, you have your core, you have your 4 Necromancer's Assistant, your 4 Satyr Wayfinders as your mill outlets, and recently, I don't remember when this card came out, but 4 Viscera Draggers. So those are your 12 core. I don't think they should be cut under any circumstances. And usually most builds and will also play Elvish Visionary because you don't have a lot of stuff going on at 2 mana. So those are your core cards, in addition to the spider spawning itself. So we have 12 turn 2 plays, actually 14. So you can hardcast the Bloodghast. We usually want those to hit the grave off a mill to to get value. It's like drawing a card. And also the thing with Bloodghast, that landfall trigger is a May. So if there's no reason to bring your Bloodghast out, just leave it there. Just leave it in the graveyard. Like if you don't see yourself getting through a blocker, like just leave it there. You don't need to bring it out. You don't want to lose it to something like an Angelic Edict or an Anger of the Gods. A lot of the time, if you have a Mycoloth in hand, you can just turn 5 player land, then bring it out, and then hardcast a Mycoloth, and there's your food right there. But it's not the greatest thing in the world to draw. So I mean, if you draw it and you don't have a better turn 2 play, then you play it. But usually you're always gonna. I mean, Satyr Wayfinder is the turn 2 play. Like you never don't play a Satyr Wayfinder on turn 2. If you can. And then it probably goes Visionary, maybe second, Cycling Dragger, maybe third, and then Bloodghast would be in last place. And then also in the value mill territory, we have the Vengevine, so if we mill it, actually putting that in the graveyard is almost as good as drawing a card. Now to get it out, we do have 10 2-drops, which will combine with, with the other 2 drops, and then so that's 4 mana to bring it out there with those 2 combination of cards. And as far as 3 drops go, we just have the 4 Necromancer's Assistants. And then usually if you start getting the 4 drops, your 4 drop will have to combine with your 2 drop to bring it out. But, it's not the hardest thing in the world to get back into play. I mean, it's not the worst thing in the world to rescue from the Underworld. It has haste. You can beat down if you don't ever draw your spider spawning, or if you don't ever mill it. So, just 3 value creatures to throw in the graveyard. Now, when the deck first came out, I used to run all 3 rescue from the Underworlds and nothing else. But I found, as far as, actual graveyard recursion goes, just the 1 rescue's fine. It is 5 mana. We do have a fair amount of enter the battlefield effects. In place of those other 2 rescue from the Underworlds, I put the 2 Dead Reckonings in. You put target creature card from your graveyard on top of your library, blah blah blah. If you do, Dead Reckoning deals damage equal to that card's power. So let's see all the things it can be. You do 2 damage, 3, usually 3. I mean, if you can cycle this and then shoot a young Pyromancer with it, and then you get it back in your hand, and you can either cycle it again, or hard cast it, whatever. Shadowborn will do 5, Sheoldred and Rune-Scarred will do 6, Vengevine will do 4, 4, 6, 7, and 5 with Craterhoof. So there are very few things that you can't kill with the Dead Reckoning. Just depends on the makeup of your graveyard to that point. I don't like Treasured Find. Like, you'll see that the Rescue from the Underworld and the 2 Dead Reckonings, plus technically the 24 lands, so that's 27 cards that have no value if put into the graveyard themselves. So I like it slightly better than Treasured Find. I mean, because in place of Treasured Finds, we also have Gravediggers to get our actual creatures out of the graveyard. We have 2. If I'm going to run Gravedigger, I always want to run 2 because, you have the loop where, you Gravedigger or Gravedigger. And really, if you've never rescued from the Underworld and had Gravedigger on one end of those, I mean, it's just ultimate value. It's almost like a 3-for-1, except you hard cast the 3rd creature. So I mean, everything else is fairly standard with a deck that mills itself a lot. I mean, a deck like this, it's almost like drawing cards. So I feel like just having, 1-ofs. I mean, obviously Shadowborn's always a 1-of, Sheoldred's always a 1-of, but something like Rune-Scarred Demon, you don't need both of those. Something like, Pelakka Wurm, you don't need all 3. Arbor Colossus, you don't need both of those. Like Paragon's in there. I mean, it's a surprise, buff all your spiders, and even, you buff your Visionary or Wayfinders. And every now and again, to give another green creature trample is relevant, because big guys like Mycoloth or Arbor Colossus do not inherently have trample. Even giving a Vengevine trample can be worth it every now and again. Both Mycoloths, though, because not only does it, make those dudes, the Devour, helps get all these little weenies into the graveyard if you want to, fire off a big spawning. So, it's a threat on its own, and it's also an enabler in the deck. But the Arbor Colossus Silver Bullet is in there, to help deal with very big flyers. I mean, there aren't too many flyers that can get through a 6/6, and then, he shoots one of them down when you Monstrous it. And, if you do Monstrous it, you can always reset it with a Rescue from the Underworld. A lot of utility with the single rescue. Like, if for some reason you got a Shadowborn something, and then, Shadowborn's the only creature on your side and it's going to die, and you have a Rescue from the Underworld in your hand, with a trigger on the stack, you can rescue it, and, it'll go to the grave, you bring something else back, and then it'll come back next turn, and you kill something else, and its trigger won't resolve until the turn after that. So just another thing to keep in mind. But really, pretty straightforward. Got your Silver Bullets, your Craterhoof. I mean, you don't even need a spawning in play, to hoof somebody. And, yeah. Nothing too complicated. Y'all have seen this deck like a million times. This is just my version of it. Things I left out. I did not put in Nemesis Immortals, because I just felt it wasn't very special. I mean, it was cool, like, the first iteration of this. But, at the end of the day, it's just it's just a really vanilla big dude. You know, it's vulnerable to all the same stuff your other big dudes are. I mean, every now and again you get to live the dream of, you know, turn 3 Nemesis, turn 4, make a 10-10, but I find having these other cards better. Like, I like the value Bloodghast and the value Vengevine better than just 3 Nemesis. But if you want them back in, those are probably the cuts I would make. Get rid of Divine, get rid of the Bloodghast, and put the Nemesis back in. And what are some other... We cut anything else? Like I said, I just find Rescue from the Underworld and Dead Reckoning to be a lot better than Treasure Find, and I don't really want to dedicate any more slots to Graveyard Recursion. So that's why they're out. And, you know, you don't really need something like Grizzlebrand. Because usually, if you even want to use Grizzlebrand, like, this deck kind of plays from behind a little bit, like, most of the time, so you can resolve a spawning or a big guy. I mean, against, you know, do-nothing decks, like control decks, you know, you can beat down pretty well. You do have really annoying things like Bloodghast to get in there. But I just don't really feel a deck like this needs a Grizzlebrand. I mean, it's fine if it's in there, but there's no real need for it. And really, see what else? Some people like the... Where is he at? The Soul of Zendikar. I just think this thing is just so underwhelming. Even if you mill it, like, you're gonna spend 5 mana to play a 3/3. Like, I mean, that's all you're doing. I mean, it's every time this thing has been played against me, or I've played with it or against it, it's just been completely underwhelming. All right, let's go to the lands. We play 24 lands because, you know, we throw a lot of lands in the graveyard, and we do need to hit our land drops. I mean, granted, we do have Satyr Wayfinder, helps a lot with that. But, you know, the magic number with this deck is 5 mana and 7 mana. So you always want to make sure you can get there. So that's why, you know, we have, you know, the Cyclers and the Wayfinders and whatnot. So I wouldn't go any lower than 24. We have slightly more forests than swamps, just because, you know, we have the Pelakka Wurm, the Arbor, Colossus, and the Craterhoof. And having green early is a lot more important than having black early, even though, you know, a lot of times you do want black early for the fire off at Dead Reckoning or even the hard cast of Bloodghast. But it's fairly balanced, so, you know, 16 total green sources compared to 14 total black. Since you don't really have any turn 1 plays, like, I feel like getting away with 6 tap lands is fine. It's about a quarter of your mana base. And these are all technically Golgari Guildgates, so just there's no reason not to run tri-land, you know, confuse your opponent and whatnot, but this is just a straight black-green Golgari deck. Alright, so that's really it, and I'll have some gameplay up shortly. So thanks for tuning into this video if, you know, you didn't know what made up a spider spawning deck. Now you do. Alright, take it easy. Bye.